minus 20 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Isn't it good to know that no matter where you
are, you're covered by a company owned by Vincentions that understands your unique insurance needs. At Metrosyn General Insurance Company, we've invested 50 years of service to guarantee that you have the peace of mind that you deserve. When it comes to motor vehicles, property, employer's liability, business insurance, and much more, we've got you covered. Our professional and friendly staff understands your needs and ensures you understand your options. Metrosyn General Insurance Company.
Good evening, viewers of IKTV. Welcome to another edition of Let's Get Down to Business. This evening on the program, we have a distinguished panel of guests. I will start by introducing you to our first panelist. He's the Honorable Melford Nicholas from Antigua. He's the Minister, among other things, he's the Minister of Information Technology, Broadcasting, Information, etc. We have our own Edmund Jackson, the Director of Finance and Planning. We have with us Dr. David McBean. He is the Director at Mona School of Business and Management. We have Ms. Claire Keyser, who is the CEO of Interactive Media. We have Ms. Karen Vera, who is the Marketing Manager at CD Vera. We have Gilbert Williams, who is the CEO and founder of Ethniv Inc. The topic we're going to be discussing this evening is e-commerce. Are we behind the curve? And I'm going to jump straight into it by asking the Honorable Melford Nicholas, what are his thoughts on e-commerce? And do you see, Minister, e-commerce being a sure way of expanding the economies of the Caribbean?
Good evening. Thank you for having me in the program. And the short answer is yes. Yes, from the standpoint that we have a number of products that we do consume here in the Caribbean, but many persons would be aware that we actually have a much larger diaspora of Caribbean citizens living in many of the metropoles. And this e-commerce opportunity affords us the opportunity to serve some of the peculiar tastes of our persons living in the diaspora. And of course, once we are able to get our products into that particular market, into those markets, we are certainly going to be able to get multiples in terms of adoption of some of the other persons who would want to be able to have a taste of some of our Caribbean products. I'm speaking about finished products, whether or not they are garment, whether or not they are refined food products, whatever it is that we have, another opportunity to come along from agriculture and other aspects of our own economic endeavors in the Caribbean. It will certainly give us an opportunity to export to the wider people.
So, fair enough. That's a good general answer. And I guess as we get into the program, we're going to see where we are along that, along the timeline in terms of e-commerce really being a significant pillar of our economy. What are the obstacles? What are the challenges? I want to bring in Mr. Edmund Jackson at this point. And Edmund, perhaps you can look at the policy framework in terms of our own government policy towards setting an enabling environment so that e-commerce can take off and live up to its true potential?
All right. Thank you, Tony, and good evening to everyone. That's an interesting question in terms of laying out the issues surrounding the policy framework. As you would know, for e-commerce to really take root and to provide the economic benefits that it can provide, an enabling ecosystem has to be present, starting first, of course, with the legal framework that makes business safe online, that recognizes online transactions. So you need to have, something like an Electronic Transactions Act. You will need to have privacy and data protection legislation, things of that nature in place. Also, on the telecoms provider side, you need some good quality, high quality communications infrastructure with reasonable costs. And we'll talk about that because I think this is part of the issue affecting the penetration of ICT to the average citizen and their ability to be online, so to speak. So from a government standpoint, I believe government over the years have made some good investments, both in terms of policy, trying to put the right policy mix in place. There are some gaps, important gaps, and I believe that we are recognizing what those are. We within the government of St. Vincent in particular, we have several systems which allow people to do business, but we are stopping short of doing payments. So that's one critical issue. So I'm talking, for example, at the customs, at the inland revenue, places like the NIS, and so on and so forth, the Treasury. These are some of the critical systems of government. But there are some important gaps missing. The policy framework is kind of laid out somewhat in the social and economic development plan, 2013 to 2025, and actions flow from that. So broadly speaking, in summary, there are some key elements in place, but I might hasten to add that there are important gaps, which makes it somewhat less optimal and makes it more difficult for actors to participate in that space.
So before I pick up the idea of these gaps, I think we'll identify them as we go along in the program. I want to just switch quickly to the folks in the private sector, and then I'll go to the academia side. Karen, let me start with you. You are a business lady. You are in the business of retail trade, and your company is also interfacing with government on many matters. Some of those that Mr. Jackson identified, paying income tax, NIS, clearing goods at customs, and so on. From where you sit, how do you see the whole digital commerce environment? And tell me if you feel in pain because of what you think may be an undeveloped state that it currently is in. I'm not putting words in your mouth, but I'd just like to hear from you and see what the perspective is.
I mean, in the Caribbean, we are a little more laid back than those in the US. So for me, we Singer is at the point where we just went to online, and it was a little challenge for us to get the e-commerce bit set up. We're still in the mix of actually getting it done because of how many tests we have to run. But beyond that, it is a little heartbreaking that it has taken us this long to get to a point where people can go online and purchase goods, and especially in this particular time with COVID and having customers not wanting to come into the store, it is a little challenging that they cannot make purchases over the internet or using e-commerce.
But why is it taking you that long? Is it because it is your own inertia in terms of your management? You're not implementing it quickly enough, or were there obstacles to implementing it?
There are obstacles. I know from doing research, I also run a band. And when we started 3 years ago, there were no banks in St. Vincent that facilitated e-commerce. So for us to do payments, we had to then use a US company so that they could facilitate the payments of Carnival costumes. And so they then had to transfer the money down to us in St. Vincent after Carnival had finished. And this is now 3 years after, and we're still in a position where the banks are not able to provide a full e-commerce system. I think BOSVG is just about finishing theirs, where people could now sign up and have the interface. But for us, it's still us running a lot of tests with 4Cs to get it done. So it's not my fault that we don't have it. It is the banks and what they're able to facilitate.
So we identified a big obstacle there, payment gateways. Claire, same sort of experience. What from the publishing media standpoint? I know your newspapers run online. You have an online subscription. You are very active in that space. What's your experience?
Searchlight, I have always, ever since I started at Searchlight full time, which is several years ago, I recognized that we needed to get online because St. Vincent and Grenadines has a very large diaspora. As a matter of fact, I think there are more Vincentians outside of St. Vincent than here in St. Vincent and Grenadines. And 2004, which is when our paper was first put online, we realized that we could not engage in e-commerce as I envisaged it. So we created a sort of workaround, and that's 17 years ago. So we have been engaging in a form of e-commerce for the last 17 years. I'm getting a feedback. We didn't have a merchant bank account. So persons wishing to buy digital subscriptions for us were directed to a form stored on a secure site, and they filled that out with their credit card information. And then we use that information to manually process the order in our office using a credit card machine. Obviously, that system had its drawbacks because if a reader bought a subscription, say at 5 p.m. on a Friday afternoon, after the office was closed, they could not get access to the paper until Monday morning when the office reopened and we were able to process the order manually. Now, we use that kind of system for about 14 years. Then in 2018, we were able to access a merchant bank account through RBTT, and we moved to a fully automated e-commerce site. So now payments we receive from persons booking advertisements or buying digital subscriptions are placed directly in our local bank account. So, and the subscriptions are processed automatically, giving readers almost immediate access to our online paper. This works much better than the system we had. And it came in especially useful last year with COVID, because after businesses started a lot of businesses started working remotely. Our local businesses were able to book and pay for advertisements online, just in the same way overseas businesses had been doing for some time. So our experience has been fairly good to date, but we're still very limited. And I could tell you about the limitations. I'm not sure if you want me to do that now.
Well, we could do that as we progress. I wanna.
Yeah, but we have been engaging in e-commerce for about 17 years, but it involved a lot of workarounds to make it work.
Yeah, so again, and I think the payment gateway was perhaps the major obstacle in your instance.
Until 2018, we do now have a payment gateway, yes.
Right. Before I get to the academia, Gilbert, you are actively involved in presenting a solution, a portal, which will, if successful, would allow Caribbean businesses to trade. It's sort of Amazon model, if I'm to use Amazon. I know you've been doing some work with the Caribbean Export Development Agency as well. What have you identified as being some of the key issues that we need to deal with to get e-commerce well and truly entrenched in the Caribbean and Caribbean economies?
Wow. That list could be pretty long, and it's not a difficult. It's some of the issues are not difficult to resolve. Where do I start? I start with Claire pointed out some clear issues, although she wasn't, explicit. And so did Karen. We have challenges of the banks within the region who have not pushed online payments. They have not integrated it into their offerings. That's one of the issues. So online payments. Currently at Carib Export, we're working on a solution that would go across the Caribbean. We're just about to finalize a bid on that. So that there would be a solution that works across the Caribbean. Other challenges is technology. The technology to make e-commerce work as smoothly as it should is relatively expensive. And what we have in the global north is we have the financial backing to make that work. So when you look at something like what Karen is doing at CD Vera, that is an additional channel that she's adding to her retail. And how do you synchronize those inventories? How do you ensure that products get delivered where it needs to be? The technology to do that sometimes is relatively expensive to implement, and is a challenge in getting funding to do those things for small vendors. Other issues that we find with policy is another big issue. When we look at, that's a whole other topic that we could get into, like as it stretches, right? When we look at the policies that governs e-commerce, or the lack of policies that governs e-commerce in the Caribbean, and policies that actually prohibits e-commerce in the region, like the different customs laws that you would find by moving products between islands. That's a challenge. The lack of innovative in solutions. So we have businesses who have been making, and I can see this because I've had several conversations with businesses throughout the Caribbean, and businesses have been making money a particular way, right? They've been making money this way for years, and to tell them, well, you now need to make an investment so that you can make money additionally. For them, it's not very appealing. And that's because the competition within the sphere of the Caribbean is not there. We don't have that innovative push or the drive that we have in the United States.
So you're saying that they're not seeing the need to. They're not seeing the need to make that investment. It's not going to change the price of X for them.
Exactly.
Yeah, but is that sustainable? Is that sustainable? Is it going to be their reality 5 years down the road? And
so when you think of it, right, Amazon is 26 years old. Right. Businesses have seen what Amazon has done, and they still remain that way. So they have been sustainable. They have, whether it goes beyond, whether it can go beyond this, I think would have to be dependent on how other businesses are funded. Right. So if we have competition that actually drives these older businesses to do such a thing, then then this is unsustainable. They're going to have to make that investment.
Yeah. All right. I'll get back to you because I know you're a man deeply entrenched in the field. But I want to bring in Dr. McBean at this point. Dr. McBean, you can give us the Jamaica status of e-commerce. I know that you're probably a little ahead of the rest of us in the Eastern Caribbean as far as e-commerce is concerned. I have seen and heard of things that happen with e-commerce platforms similar to these delivery services and all sorts of things. You almost have an Uber up there, I understand. So give me what's happening on the ground in Jamaica and tell me how the university is factoring into all of this. How is the university creating the capacity for our modern business people to move in that direction?
So thanks, Tony. And before I go any further, I'd like to say, my best wishes to the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We have some students in our business school from St. Vincent, and we in the north understand what it is to be hit by hurricanes, not by volcanoes, but we understand natural disruption. The Jamaican experience, I would say, may be a bit ahead of some of what I term the smaller countries in the Eastern from a mindset problem in the Caribbean. And I think Gilbert alluded to it, which is we need to stop talking about e-commerce and just realize that when you do commerce, there are different channels, and the electronic channels just become one of the channels that you have to distribute through. And we talk about doing a lot of work in software in the Caribbean. Well, you have to be enabled to deliver through electronic channels, take orders, do fulfillments, etc. So in Jamaica, I think COVID has accelerated it. I've been involved on the private side and now on the academic side and also in the government side in e-commerce attempts for over 20 years. And we have to stop seeing whether policy or business or even academia as being an add-on, an extra, a nice to have. And I think that's the main thing that's driving e-commerce. So in Jamaica, one of the silver linings of COVID was that they developed something called ENDS, Emergency National Delivery System, because we have a series of curfews and they found it was killing small restaurants and in particular. So now there's this online platform that bridges between the physical world of a small operator. So it could be a jerk chicken man or a restaurant where people can go order food and get it delivered within the curfew hours. And that's helped to do business. So suddenly it's starting a shift as to, hey, this e-commerce thing could be a saver to my business. Where we have to come in as a university, and I say to folks, the main thing in university is open the minds of students to take advantage of opportunities. So for example, 10 years ago, there was nothing like a social media manager or any of the other jobs that the new gig economy has thrown up. But somebody who got a marketing degree a decade ago has to survive in this new world. And it's all about, is your mind open enough? Are you creative enough to take those opportunities? And that's the main thing we're trying to drive through the business school in our students. So we do, entrepreneurship, venture competitions, but at the end of the day, it's how do you think? Because how you do e-commerce now is not how you do e-commerce tomorrow. 20 years ago, we did something innovative at the then Telecommunications of Jamaica, which was allows someone to use the IVR, the interactive voice response system on the telephone to pay their bill using a local credit card. Now that's e-commerce, but it never involved going on a screen, but that was just building a bridging system within the realities of Jamaica then to allow people to pay their bills online. And I'll close by saying this, we have to customize our solutions. Right? We don't have companies with big supply chains, but we have to develop what I call appropriate logistics and supply chains, fulfillment systems. And this has to become an integral part of business. So whether you're a small business or a large business, when you start your business, you're thinking about re-engineering your business, you now have to start, because the current generation, they're very app-based. They're not concerned about how big the pipe is. As long as it can be done on their phone, they're good. So, and I think in a lot of ways, that's where the transition.
I hear you. I'm just wondering where small businesses is going to get that sort of support from, technical support. Who's going to be the one that's going to be building capacity within the small businesses? I know there are business support organizations like the one that I represent, the Chamber of Industry and Commerce. But there's definitely a need to lead small businesses along that direction and support them. Mr. Minister, Gilbert had identified something when he was on about problems at the border, moving goods around the Caribbean. We've got these treaties, within the OACS, we've got the revised Treaty of Bastille with Wider CARICOM, we've got the Rice Treaty of Chaguaramas. And the whole spirit of these treaties is to encourage trade, movement of goods, people, services, okay, and unhindered movement. But yet, in the private sector, people are still encountering all sorts of issues. But my simple question to you is why?
Well, let me just say that as I listened to the discussion, I would have participated in a forum like this at least 3 years ago in Trinidad. And the question was, how do small businesses get a better shake in the fintech industry? And my argument then, and my rejoinder then, was that the technology is not the issue. The technology is there. What Amazon has done, what eBay has done, it's available in large measure. It can be replicated. There's no hidden secrets there in respect of those platforms. Where I think we have challenges, and I think Dr. McBean hinted at some of it, it's in the logistics management. You take a company like Amerijet. Amerijet flies billions of dollars of finished products from Amazon and perhaps maybe even other online traders into the Caribbean. Every young person that I know from the time they would have landed their first paycheck and they have some form of digital settlement ability, like a debit card, would acquire an Amazon Prime account. And many of the retail businesses in our capitals are no longer getting the immediate trade in goods from this young crowd. They're actually importing them. So the logistics in terms of goods entering the Caribbean is in place. You have companies like Amerijet, like, and those others, Store & Forward. And there are many persons who would have acquired a US-based shipping address, and then they Store & Forward into the Caribbean. Why haven't we been able to replicate that and to do that in reverse? If we use, for example, some of our finished goods, I know that in Jamaica's case, there is JamPro that deals with the promotion of Jamaican products abroad in the diaspora markets. But let me just use an example of one of our finished products in which we all have branded hot sauces from our particular location. Anybody who has a taste of Tabasco hot sauce and compares it to any of the hot sauces, whether it is Susie's from Antigua, Brimstone Hill from St. Kitts, Matuks from Trinidad, I don't care which one, you have an inferior taste in terms of Tabasco compared to any one of these hot sauces in the Caribbean. How do we get to the level of improving production, and how do we get that level of products into the larger markets? And I think we do not, I'm picking up here that there is an element of, are we trading internally enough? Do government have enough engagement with its private sector partners and with its citizens? Is government prepared to do commerce online? Are government services available online? I think that's one cotyledon. The other half
What's
of
the
it is,
situation in
what
Antigua?
is-
Just to interrupt, in terms of, as you're hitting that point about governments doing business online, what's your own situation in Antigua? What are we able to pay income tax online? And well, you don't charge income tax there, I believe, but are you able to pay your sales taxes, driver's license, etc.?
Driver's license can be done online and has been in place since 2016. We are certainly going to be revamping our own citizens portal later this year, and all of the services that we would want to do. We're just now at the cusp of digitizing our civil registry. So we are going to move towards a full digital identity platform for all citizens and residents before the end of the year, which will accelerate the ability for government to offer its services online. And of course, it will be a fillip as well to the private sector. The banks and insurance companies, I'm sure, will benefit from that particular platform. But so in terms of what we're doing to make doing business with the government, doing business with each other more easily accessible, the legislative framework is there. That is in place, and I think we'll get to that position. Governments have got to invest in infrastructure. They have got to invest in a lot of automation, and that's going to be a costly endeavor. And of course, then they have to integrate So we are along that particular path. But I'm going back to the whole issue in terms of trade and what we do in terms of e-commerce. I'm going to challenge my fellow panelists to say that one of the elements that is missing is entrepreneurship. I think Dr. McBain was hinting at it. The models are there, and it's a question of, do we have a breakthrough? I challenged Cable Wireless a few years ago. The Trinidad Soca Monarch competition is something that we like very much. Everyone in the Caribbean likes it. And Flow has an agreement with the producers of that particular show in Trinidad. But every year, the Crib Cabinet can find that to just their cable television channel, when they could have digitized that product and marketed it such that the entire diaspora could pay small subscription fees and would have created a whole new commercial enterprise. And in my view, some of the cultural products in the Caribbean can be further digitized and monetized. And so it's, in my humble opinion, it is the absence of the entrepreneurship that is really the key. I think one of the, maybe two of the persons who spoke before on the challenge with the financial sector. This is universal across the Caribbean. The whole idea of having merchant accounts is a particular issue, but I think slowly the banks are waking up to that reality that they have to provide more merchant IDs, more merchant accounts for business to operate in this sphere. And of course, persons would have hit on the whole issue of funding. And so our capital markets and what we do, whether or not we use more capital markets, crowdfunding, we don't know. This is a whole question to me of what is going to happen in this space and when our entrepreneurship is going to wake up to the reality that it is going to be left up to them to run this leg of the race.
So just before I go to the break, I just want to introduce this as you are talking about entrepreneurship, and we're just looking at some global trends here, and I'll tell you what are some of the biggest trading items using e-commerce. The biggest one is digital entertainment. That makes up like 24% of all e-commerce that's done. Alcohol is a big one.
There you go.
Apparel, home improvement, non-digital entertainment, and travel. So those are like the five or six top categories in terms of items that are traded. And that's a global trend. I'm not saying that is necessarily something that the Caribbean, we can fashion our own trends, our own activity. But I want to leave that there. When I come back from the break, I'm going to pick it up with Mr. Jackson. And I want to get you to think over the break, Mr. Jackson, about your own revenues that you collect at the customs. Are you seeing a shift in terms of how that revenue is coming through? Imported from our retail people here, or people shopping directly online? Are you seeing that shift? So address your mind to that. But Morales, let's go to the break. Let's take our first break now.
Isn't it good to know that no matter where you are, you're covered by a company owned by Concentric that understands your unique insurance needs?
At Metrosint General Insurance Company, we've invested 50 years of service to guarantee that you have the peace of mind that you deserve. When it comes to motor vehicle, property, employer's liability, business insurance, and much more, we've got you covered. Our professional and friendly staff understands your needs and ensures you understand your options. Metrosint General Insurance Company.
Welcome back. Before I went to the break, I was prompted Mr. Jackson to address his mind to what he's seeing. What are the trends now at customs in terms of the revenues that your revenue stream there? Are you seeing more and more a shift to things that are being bought directly online from outside the region, I imagine. What are you experiencing there, Mr. Jackson?
Right. So largely, revenue is still coming in from the traditional sources, the major importers, the top 5, the top 10. However, we are seeing increasingly a move towards online purchases. A lot of persons using, their MyRejet, and to the extent that we have had to extend the facilities to support the arrival of air cargo. So yes, there is that trend, and I think businesses locally by now should recognize that their competitor is not only the next shop down the street, but that online store. Because persons, when they walk into a store to make a major purchase, or any purchase for that matter, they make a comparison online versus locally, and they do their calculations based on convenience and things like that. Of course, if it's a big item where warranties are involved, they may have a second thought. But the competition is really now online. Persons are increasingly moving towards online purchases. To the extent, I believe most persons will walk into a store, try on a pair of pants, and then go online and find it and buy it, things of that nature. So I think for businesses locally, that is something that they need to pay attention to in terms of competition, that the competition is not just local, but you also competing with those international online retail outlets.
So I'm going to throw this open to Claire, Karen, and Gilbert. The idea of an existential threat to businesses, something that certainly we don't want to see businesses outside the region pulling our own businesses under. That does not augur well for our economy. So how do we need to grapple with this? What are your thoughts on this? Take it in any order. Who wants to jump in?
Tony,
Claire, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in here. The minister said a little earlier that the technology is here. It is the entrepreneurship that's lagging behind. And I would like to take a little issue with that, because if the entrepreneurship is lagging, it's not for want of trying. To my mind, there are limitless ideas out there, and people have been trying, but the problem has been, one of the main shortcomings, I think, is that we are so limited with the payment methods that can be accepted by businesses that set up online. For example, Tony, businesses in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and I'm not sure what is the situation in the other OECS countries, but businesses in St. Vincent and the Grenadines still cannot accept payments through PayPal. And we know that many online shoppers, especially when they're dealing with smaller businesses, feel a lot safer and more comfortable making payments through PayPal. And also, for example, right now, even if you have a merchant bank account, as we do at Searchlight, we are limited to Visa, MasterCard. And at present, e-commerce shuts out many local consumers who, while they may have a smartphone, they do not have a credit or debit card or even a bank account. So there are limited payment methods. And then when entrepreneurs come up with ideas such as PaySwift, and we read about PaySwift in the newspapers this weekend, because of the regulations to do with the banking systems and so on, these ideas, these small businesses run into trouble pretty soon. So because of the limited payment methods, we have many problems trying to launch new ideas and new businesses in the Caribbean. I think entrepreneurs have many ideas, but it's so difficult, first of all, to get a bank account. And when you do, you're limited to how you can receive money, especially if you want to receive money from clients, customers right here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
I'm going to pause you there and ask Mr. Jackson and also the minister to respond to that business of some of these payment gateways. Why are we finding it difficult for these people to operate? What are the issues? And PayPal in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, what is the status of PayPal being able to function here? Is there a legislative block? So I don't know.
Right. So let me jump in, because this is a matter we've been trying to address our minds to for some time now, about a year now, and it just culminated just on Friday, where I sent an email to our ambassador in Washington for her to try to hit the ground with corporate headquarters of PayPal in San Jose in California to really find out exactly what's happening. We have been reaching out to PayPal. We have communicated with them, but we are not getting definitive answers as to why. Most of the other, well, all of the other countries in the ECCU region can receive payments from PayPal. And when we reached out to PayPal, they gave us a very innocuous response, saying that there were some compliance issues, very non-specific, and that they're working on it with the government. Now, the Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning is the IT ministry. They're not working with the FSA. They're not doing any work with the FIU. Neither are they doing any work with the Ministry of Finance or the Attorney General's chambers. So we are at a loss. So I sent just this Friday, because of what Claire just mentioned, the issues surrounding ISWIFT and the anti-money laundering compliance concerns that the correspondent bank would have had with the Bank of St. Vincent. So there are larger issues at play. We are very unclear. Hopefully, the ambassador may be able to get some answers for us, because we just do not know. We just do not know what's the reason behind it.
Minister, what's the situation
yes,
in Antigua?
I would say in response to Claire that I acknowledge that the banks play a critical role, and the fact that they have not provided sufficient enablement for e-commerce to thrive, it's an issue. But if I could give them a flavor of your own experience here in Antigua, what has begun to happen is that the banking sector is changing. I'm sure persons will be aware that there is an exodus of some of the Canadian banks from within the Caribbean sector, banking sector, and more the local commercial banks are taking up that space. And there is some consolidation taking place within the OECS banking sector as well. But even further than that, and below the banks, a number of the credit unions are in fact picking up some of that financial slack, and are getting more and more involved in helping to come to grips with the unbanked persons, who many of the larger commercial banks would have come to know that for a long time. And so we have situations in Antigua where many of the credit unions are in fact issuing debit cards that are on the Visa and MasterCard platform. So it enables them right away to be engaged in online commerce. We have a local bank and one of its derivatives that is providing its own electronic platform. It's called SugarPay. It's a prepaid debit card where you can actually purchase it over the counter. And it is also on the MasterCard platform that will allow persons to be able to do that. So I guess in the case of St. Vincent, it may be a little different. And I think that this conversation sets up an opportunity for persons to see what we're doing in each other's territories, and perhaps maybe provide some sandbox environment for persons to say, listen, it's happening over in Antigua. Can you avail me of a commercial contact in the banking sector, such that we could speak to and allow that to happen? But I would want to say that where I see the problem with entrepreneurship, if you go back to that statistical information that you shared about apparel, what are the major apparel brands that we have in the Caribbean? You have many. In fact, I think we will probably spend the best part of today, balance of this program, trying to identify a single apparel brand within the Caribbean. And I think we must get these types of breakthroughs, because brands are things that people consume and buy every day.
But they're also niche. They're also niche things that just to interject here. I know, for example, Claire is very familiar with this. I think Karen knows the person too. There's somebody here who does these. I think you call them crochet dolls. They're knitted dolls that are done they're customized, they're bespoke. It's a bespoke product, and it's very popular. So while she does not have a brand, there's certainly a niche product. What we need to be able to do is to lift that from where she is onto an enabling e-commerce platform that propels her products, globally. So is logistics one of the impediments here? I know, Gilbert, you were talking about you were addressing logistics in an earlier conversation we were having this week, and the logistic partners that may come to the fore to resolve these issues. So I'm just throwing that out there.
So let's step back a bit, right? Claire, I think, was right on point with a lot of the points that she made. Let me paint a bigger picture of what the opportunities are within the region. The Caribbean diaspora, of which I'm a part of, remits annually $20 billion plus back to the Caribbean, right? So that's a stream of capital flow back to the region, $20 billion. Now, a lot of that comes in goods that already exist in the region. If we were to create, if we were to let awareness, one of the challenges that I see is awareness. Me being in the diaspora, I do not know what exists in the Caribbean, so I cannot make that purchase. I'm a busy professional, right? I don't have time to go to the store to pack a barrel to send to my mom. I'd much rather log on to a CD Vera, log on to a CK Grooves, buy those goods and have them delivered, right? So we need to put things in place where that awareness is there. Two, when we talk about PayPal, why are we depending on foreign entities to provide payment solutions? And I must say, the folks at Carib Export, Suzette Hudson, brilliant at this. You guys need to reach out to her and support the programs that she's currently developing. She's developing, putting in place development for payment solutions that would stop capital transference. Like when we look at Visa and MasterCard, the capital transference out to the Caribbean to these companies annually is upward of $500 million just in fees. Those monies can remain in Caribbean economies if we were to put the things in place that we need to put in place. I don't understand why we need to discuss why, and I know why PayPal and the other companies are not allowing payments. This is an industry that I've been in for over 20 years.
Why?
For one, the financial market is backed solely and primarily by the US dollar, right? Control of the flow of monies in and out the global south has always been regulated from the global north, primarily the United States. I can go into an example of a payment solutions company that was developed in Nigeria. Absolutely brilliant. What they were doing in Nigeria and how they allowed the Nigerian market to just flourish in terms of e-commerce. And then Visa steps in, buys them, regain control of how that money flows to that global south country. Right? I mean, I've had questions from ministers about what can we do about that? But that's not a solution for someone like me. That's a solution that the minister from Antigua just pointed out. Your ambassadors need to get in contact with the people who are in charge of these things and regulate that. We had First Data as our payment provider. And I must say right now, within our platform, we have maybe 6 or 7 different gateways built in, including PayPal. So a merchant that joins with us don't have to worry about those payment solutions. But we had First Data. And as soon as we started generating a certain amount of sales, they stepped in and said, well, we're going to have to stop your sales. So we said, why are you doing this? Because the volume of transaction is not in keeping with the agreement that we had. But we had that discussion. We're doing e-commerce. The volumes of transactions are going to increase over time as we develop. But the fact that they have that power to pull their plugs at any particular point in time because what we've done doesn't directly benefit them exists, and we need to change that.
Well, I guess, I mean, in the interest of time, I guess the policy people on the call, namely Mr. Jackson and the minister may want to jump in on this whole idea of these regulations that stymie any sort of solution, local homegrown solution or regional solution that we get going. How are we going to get over those hurdles, really? Is there some sort of light at the end of the tunnel?
Yeah, there is. As I said, the folks at Carib Export actually, I think maybe in another couple of week or two, would release award a bid to a company that's going to study where we go about or how we come about and overcome this payment solutions issues. One of the things that I did with Etnav is, as I said, we are registered in the United States, so we are allowed to have several different gateways built into our platform, so the merchant doesn't have to worry about that. Because we are registered here, we don't necessarily face the same challenges. And I have to go back. I'm sorry, but that what Claire said was so important when you talk about entrepreneurs. We hear all the time that Caribbean businesses are risk averse, and they're not. I must say that they're not. The small entrepreneurs that I've met throughout the Caribbean, and I've traveled up and down the Caribbean interviewing, speaking with them, a lot of them are just small merchant because they lack the support that they need. I've dealt with a couple of the guys from Channel One who do CMOS, and that market has a potential to be booming. Again, lack of support. They're not risk averse. In the United States,
that's another niche product. Agreed.
Yeah, in the United States. Not for me. I have a challenge that I was born with, and it's obvious, right? I can't just walk in and get finances because of the way that I look. But here, you can get financial backing to do certain things, to make investments, to grow your business. In the Caribbean, that is very much lacking, from the banks to private sector to capital funding. That's lacking. So when a small business in the region decides to invest and have their business evolve, if that fails, everything fails for that person, because they do not have the necessary support to push forward, to push past a certain point, right? We asked about the technology, and again, the technology to do a lot of the things that needs to be done, although it exists, it's relatively expensive. Like, we have solutions that deal with authentication of products, logistics, so delivery based on a Uber-like system, inventory management, sales management solutions. To implement solutions like that in the United States could run a firm upward of a couple of $1 million. How dare you ask a Caribbean small business to say, all right, we're going to do this? And those things are necessary if you're going to move into e-commerce.
I'm going to interrupt you because I would like to hear. I would like to hear the Dr. Matt Bean's response to some of the issues that you've identified, given the Jamaica economy, and I still would advance the notion that you are slightly ahead. I know you say you're not where you want to be, but you're slightly ahead. Some of these payment vehicles are not necessarily a challenge for you. I don't know where you are with digital wallets, and you've got a junior stock market there. You've got some different vehicles for access to finance. Share some of that Jamaica experience with us.
Yeah, so it's getting a big push now, Anthony. So, for example, we have a development bank here that now has an innovation fund, specifically for entrepreneurs and small businesses. And it's about $40 million in the region. And a big part of it is creating an enabling environment. One of the things that we have to do with our small business is training. So even before we come back to e-commerce, a lot of our small businesses don't keep proper books. So they don't have the level of financial literacy that is needed to survive in the current environment. There are a lot of smaller scale solutions we have. Even putting up your inventory using Excel or some other common spreadsheet, it's not there. So a lot of it is mindset. We're brimming with ideas. We run an entrepreneurship competition on the Mona campus at UWI. And they go on to win. We've won from Jamaica first prize at the big entrepreneurship competition for students in Utah. There's no question about ideas and the launch companies. But why I said the mindset is, and the minister and myself, and I think you're involved too, Tony, can go back to many years ago where there was a thriving e-commerce business in Antigua that got too successful and got shut down.
Well, and I think that's one of the issues that
it is an issue, but I think we need to change that discussion.
Gilbert was identifying that very Boolean issue. It's a question of, I think that's what Gilbert was getting at.
It's policy. It's what's important to the government. I mean, 10 years ago, mobile money was supposed to be imminent across several countries in the Caribbean. At that time, I was still involved in telecom. We're on the verge of buying a payments provider and a fulfillment provider just around mobile wallets and mobile money. 10 years later, nothing has been done. So, all from both the business, policy, and research time, we have to be seized with the urgency of now. So, what's the level of our customer service as well? We have to go back to that. I go into a local provider and the experience is not great. I go online, 4 clicks later, I sit back and I wait for the notification from the local delivery person that my Amazon package is here. Do I want to come pick it up or have it delivered to my door? So we don't just need to re-engineer what we do. We need to reimagine business. So you should make it so easy for me to get a product from a local store, whether I ring you up, whether I go online and select it, whether I go online and pay for it, or when I come in, I swipe my credit card. Right? But it's not that easy. So as long as you're making it easier for somebody to sign up with the Amazons of this world, select the product that they want. Sometimes when it comes, it doesn't work. You can't even return it. The warranty is gone. But commerce has become so painful for a lot of our people that it doesn't work. We touch again on bank accounts, Tony. You know, the banks will tell you that they're open for business. And as I said to one of my banking friends, you think you're open for business, and what they see there's a security guard with their hands crossed like this, with a scowl, and there's big steel barriers behind you which says not here. So we don't make it easier to get a bank account. It's easier for me to go to Miami and open a bank account using my driver's license than it is to open a bank account. And I've tried it in about 6 Caribbean countries. Where
Mr. Jackson and the minister, I want to pause you there, David, and just ask what is the real reason why it seems so difficult for the unbanked to get banked? Why? What is it?
The bank. So let me just respond. I mean, I think it's the issue of the bank is not something that is hidden. I think at CARICOM level and at the OECS level, the issue of what governments are faced with corresponding banking relationships, our local domestic banks, and what they've done in the United States. I think we had a breakthrough recently in the Congress of the United States, where they have ameliorated some of those conditions. I think my own Prime Minister is the subject matter lead for CARICOM and this whole question of engaging the United States commerce sector in relation to the de-risking issue as it affects the Caribbean. So it is not a simple issue to overcome. What the central bank within the ECCB has done with digitizing the currency perhaps maybe is an issue. I saw just before coming on this call that the economist has begun to look at governments now going digital cash, and that may be another potential breakthrough that solves some of these issues for us. But for the here and now, I would just want to posit that there are 3 infrastructure issues that we have to overcome, and no small business can provide these infrastructure for themselves. It's just unattainable economically. And that is the logistics component. There has to be a logistic model sitting there to enable. And the sooner or later we come to grips with the reality that the logistics is moving the goods from the producers to the consumers and moving them across borders, dealing with all of the customs issue and the trade issue and the fights with sanitary issues. All of those issues, a logistic framework exists to be able to do that. The banks, as we know, we're discussing them for the past hour, they have to play a role in the whole question of the infrastructure. And of course, there's also the media. the media that we have in the Caribbean to be able to assist us in getting eyeball to eyeball with our consumers, both in the diaspora and home in the local markets as well. And what does that media look like? It has to be new media. It has to be new media. And how are we going to create the brand for that new media in the Caribbean? And that is where I am asking the question, are the universities, are our future entrepreneurs focused on this? This is the leadership that I think it is lacking. But insofar as the technology, insofar as the know-how is concerned, I am satisfied that all the elements are there, and we really just need some breakthrough leadership to be able to make sure that this can happen.
Mr. Jackson, Dcash, which is the digital wallets that the East Caribbean Central Bank is going to launch very shortly, or has launched, I think, has launched. Where is St. Vincent featuring in that participation? Are we? Am I going to be able to get a Dcash wallet?
Hopefully pretty soon. So the central bank initially utilized a pilot project strategy to roll out the Dcash in four countries, and in selecting the pilots, they basically made their choice based upon the readiness, the eagerness, the enthusiasm expressed by the local banks. St. Vincent initially was not a pilot, so I don't think I need to say anything more about that. I've already described the criteria. However, since COVID and since, just prior to last Soufriere, we were able to speak with the governor of the central bank to extend an expedited rollout here in St. Vincent. And so they are working, I think, with Bank of St. Vincent right now, and I believe they may have reached out to Republic Bank. So hopefully soon, Dcash will be available for persons here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I think the minister dealt with the bank account issue pretty well. I don't need to belabor that point. That is beyond our shores, and it continues to be the issue that I think Gilbert might have pointed to, dealing with online payments, but now dealing with correspondent banking relationships. We have seen it also with the EU and the OECD tax initiative and so on. So we in this region, small economies, have been buffeted by a lot of these lists and a lot of these concerns, because essentially the trigger to pull the plug on PaySwift came from an overseas bank that has a banking relationship with Bank of St. Vincent, because the volume of transactions ballooned over the last Soufriere eruptive period. And the Bank of St. Vincent really had to take a decision. Do I put this relationship at risk, this correspondent relationship at risk, or do I pull the plug on this small business? And so these are the issues. And I'm going to reach out to Suzette Hudson, my brother Gilbert. I don't know, you may have to send me the contact information, because this issue of an online payment platform for us in the region to bypass the Miami with Visa and MasterCard and all these fees has been plaguing us for some time. We have been trying in government to put certain services online, but the costs associated with it was a deterrent. We tried to get our company registry online maybe 10, 12 years ago, the SIPO office, at the level of the income tax and so on. But the fees associated with these things are just prohibitive. But anyway, I suppose the light is at the end of the tunnel, and hopefully we can make some progress within short time on these matters.
I'm coming up to the second break, but just before I go to that, I want to hear from Karen and Claire about the customer side of things. Are you seeing any increase at all in people coming in and purchasing your commodities using plastic, or we still very much, it's still holding hard and fast on cash? Are you seeing a shift at all towards debit card, credit cards? Well, we don't have digital wallets here yet. So
definitely, I find that there is a shift in the use of debit cards and credit cards. We have people who are in the Grenadines who want to pay for their appliances using credit cards and debit cards over the phone. But a lot of our customers are still traditional, and they pay their accounts using cash. So they would go to the banks, line up get their money, and then come to the store and pay their bills.
That's
So I
amazing.
think
Claire, is that a cultural thing, you think?
Yes, and as Karen said, initially 100% of our digital subscribers were overseas, but I would think right now we have increased to about 30% local subscribers who have paid for their subscriptions online and now have digital subscriptions. But as I mentioned before, what we need to see is there are quite a few people in St. Vincent and the Grenadines who don't even have a bank account, but who would wish to take part in the digital economy. So so obviously they don't have a debit or credit card. So these digital wallets will make it easier for them to participate in these sorts of transactions that we're talking about, because they do own a smartphone, So yeah, digital wallets. We need some sort of payment system, even if it's just a regional, a local, some sort of payment system that bypasses the international banking system.
Well, on that point, Morales, I think you could take us out to the next break.
Isn't it good to know that no matter where you are, you're covered? Covered by a company owned by Vincentions that understands your unique insurance needs. At Metrosint General Insurance Company, we've invested 50 years of service to guarantee that you have the peace of mind that you deserve. When it comes to motor vehicle, property, employer's liability, business insurance, and much more, we've got you covered. Our professional and friendly staff understands your needs and ensures you understand your options. Metrosint General Insurance Company.
Welcome back, viewers. You are looking at Let's Get Down to Business. We have on the panel this discussion. We have the Honorable Melford Nicholas from Antigua. We have Dr. David McBean from Jamaica. We have Gilbert Williams, who is based somewhere in the States. I think you are, Gilbert.
I am. I'm in New York.
You're in New York. We have locally based Mr. Edmund Jackson, Ms. Claire Keyser, and Karen Vera. My co-host is Maurice Franklin, who is sitting rather quiet tonight, making all the observations that she needs to make. Now, let me throw this out to the panel. You know, the last statistic I saw, and I have it in front of me, is the value of e-commerce trade. Business to consumer. I'm not talking business to business. Business to consumer. It's in the trillions. It's 4 point something trillion, and climbing. So when we look at the Caribbean, if we were to participate at some percentage factor of that, clearly it will make a significant impact on the economy. However, what I want to throw out to you, and maybe the minister may want to jump in here first, is the idea of trading outside of our borders, moving our products, our services, whether it be in the creative industries, whether it be a music concert, what have you, outside of our regional borders, and the trading within our regional borders. Is it something that we should approach simultaneously, or should we build a solid platform using the treaties that we have in place, that we're trying to get to work, giving them some flesh and getting us to trade a lot among ourselves on an e-commerce platform?
Answer is a short yes, a resounding yes, and I think Dr. hinted at us having to reimagine some of the things that we have done. I think I am one of those persons, and I am also at the stage when I think that I'm president of the Caribbean Telecommunications Union, which is a division, a subdivision of the CARICOM organization. But I have to say, CARICOM and its organizations sometimes have become too bureaucratic. We have gotten caught up in a lot of academic systems. If you were to reimagine trade, you understand that this vehicle normalizes or provides some degree of equalization for our products to be able to reach markets that they hitherto could not reach before. If we accepted that as a basic premise, then we would have to reconceptualize what we do in our respective ministries of trade. And to create these systems and to build these infrastructure within the region to allow us to participate at the level. And if you were to work backwards from what you said, Tony, I'm looking at those numbers, those trillions of US dollars, and to even say, listen, 5% of that, 3% or half of 1% of that as an inflow, further inflow into the region, what does it mean? And how do we build upon that? I think if we work backwards and provided that leadership, I think we can certainly get further. When you look at so many things in the region that are underutilized, or pelagic resources for that matter. We have trawler boats coming into our region and taking advantage of our fish stock in the region, and we do nothing about it. But it is ours, and if we were to be able to do that, why? We have so many students in university that have done marine biology, and to be able to meet the global phytosanitary conditions to export into markets like Japan and other areas. It is within us to do, but we have some work to do to get done to ensure that our productive capacities are now meeting the opportunities for reaching these new markets because of this channel that is available to us today.
Dr. McBean, is the university making a deliberate intervention in bucking these trends? What you're doing with your students? Are you trying to instill, so when they come out of your programs, are they going to enter the workspace, the environment with a reimagined idea? It's a word that y'all have been throwing around, of how business is to be conducted and where we exploit the resources and the vehicles that we can use to propel, the sale and transfer of the commodities.
So the answer there, Tony, is yes and no, and that may sound like a strange answer. We dump a lot of the responsibility on the universities, not realizing that a lot of the work has to be done before and after. So how are we teaching in the high schools, right? But that's another topic I'd be quite happy to go and discuss. I don't think CXC is doing the best job it does of what it tests on. Okay? And when you leave university, you leave with a fertile mind, but that needs to be trained in the workplace or in other jobs. And I think that is part of what we're missing. So if you come back to what the universities are doing. So that's the yes and no bit of it. The yes part is that increasingly we are pushing entrepreneurship, looking at new workplace ventures. I think the step we have to go to is what I call developing intrapreneurs as opposed to entrepreneurs. So an intrapreneur goes into a business, takes it on as if it was their own, and seek out innovative solutions and ideas in the context of working in a business. Because only about 1 to 2% of our students will end up being successful entrepreneurs. And even the successful entrepreneurs have to hire people who themselves have to be flexible enough to work in an entrepreneurial environment. And, I believe in the Caribbean that's the challenge for the university to see that you can no longer go into the world of work and say it's just 9 to 5 by rote. I wait in the morning to take on my list of tasks or duties that I will do for the day. I do them like a robot, pack up at 5 o'clock and go home. There has to be a greater level of engagement, whether you are the entrepreneur, but they're working for an entrepreneur, or you're working for an established business. And, you know, the other thing I'd like to say is that we have to get folks to use what we have. Right? We have a lot in the Caribbean that can generate these solutions. And I'm sorry to go back to the bank thing, but we make it too hard for locals to open a local bank account. We look at somebody and say, I will give you a savings account and I'll see how you perform, and then in 3 months I might extend that to a checking account, or I'll give you a debit card, but I won't give you a card. A lot of our pain points, and I'm not by any means diminishing what is happening with correspondent banking, but we can put up local ecosystems for e-commerce within the Caribbean. So forget correspondent banking, how easy it is to send a package from St. Vincent to Barbados or St. Vincent to Jamaica. What will happen when it gets to customs? We have the single single market and economy, and it's not that single. So there's a lot of things. For example, I love to buy sauces, goods, art, anything from around the Caribbean. And even if I buy it via an e-commerce platform, it has a more difficult time getting through Caribbean customs at the sending end and the receiving end than something that's coming from the north.
Yes.
But when we had World Cup, we created a truly single travel space and a single movement of goods. Those of us who went, remember that yellow band, that once you got that yellow band, you just sailed through customs and immigration. And I don't recall we had any more crime, theft, illegal immigration, loss of jobs in that period. So I think, you know, that's what we have to try.
Yeah, yes, Minister, you were jumping in there. My question is,
I was agreeing with Dr.
that you probably go sometimes, you know, on the circuit with the Caribbean leaders, which you're one. Is the will really there to get back to that yellow band World Cup situation that we created?
Again, yes, but I think that there has to be a dual role. So I think it has to be a tripartite. I think the private sector has to come and go with that as well. And if I may posit one thing, is that getting something that Dr. McLean just described and the agenda for the CARICOM heads when they meet is extremely difficult and bureaucratic. You cannot have a simple conversation about this. So to my mind, there has to be a new methodology of having this conversation. So your Chamber of Commerce in St. Vincent seems to be active. I want to applaud you for staging a forum like this. I think we need to have more of these. And out of these come ideas and the ferment for us to be able to come up with a new agenda for things to be done. I am positive that there needs to be logistics. When I heard Dr. McLean say it's difficult for products to move from one Caribbean country to the other, right now we are redeveloping Port St. John's and Antigua, where we're going to have some logistics on the port. It's going to mean it's going to be easier for American finished goods to be able to land in bulk in Antigua and then be redistributed to other parts of the Caribbean at that new port. But what about the Caribbean finished goods coagulating in a single port, in a single logistics platform, and being able to be distributed with the transportation that is required to do that?
And I think we have somebody on the call, on the platform here, in the form of Gilbert, who's exactly representing what you're speaking about there, in terms of coagulating Caribbean goods onto one platform and moving them around the region initially anyway, and with all the logistic support, because clearly
that company needs to exist. And if Gilbert is doing that, I'd be interested in having that very conversation, I could put you in touch with the persons here at our Port Authority to be able to facilitate those ends, because I think it's required for future trade in intra-Caribbean and extra-Caribbean.
Yeah, we have made significant investment in developing applications and partnership with a company out of St. Vincent again, Swiftpack. Ricardo Drayton is doing an incredible job in developing logistic solutions for the Caribbean, regionally and internationally. So we're looking at doing warehouse and distribution for Caribbean products out of Miami. So in the sense that we can consolidate large shipments of goods from either of the islands, we would warehouse them, take orders online, and have them delivered throughout North America. Excellent. We have not entered the European market as yet. We're also doing 2 hubs in the Caribbean as well. Excuse me?
Yeah, we do need the Trans-Caribbean.
Right, so we're doing the Trans-Caribbean as well, because we can move packages at incredible rates. And I've had several conversations both with FedEx and DHL, with the 3 companies, FedEx, DHL, and UPS, about moving packages. They have zero interest in moving Caribbean goods outside of the region or within the region. The cost is prohibitive, and they'd rather fly planes empty. I mean, I think at some point in time, we need to put pressure on these companies so that they do a better job. And there are multiple ways we can do that, right? But Swiftpack is actually doing a great service in moving packages between the islands on a regular basis. And we're planning to do 2 hubs within the Caribbean where products can be sold. Sure.
But I interrupt you to make the point that I really wanted to talk about the private sector and government. Now, here it is that I know that these aircraft are flying back into North America empty. And if, as you're saying, you're the logistics company trying to develop it and they're showing this, this is where governmental intervention comes in, because
absolutely
we have to get them licenses to be performers. So there is an opportunity for government to shake hands with you and to bring this opportunity home. So I'm very much interested in what you're doing, and I'm certainly going to avail myself of the contact and put you in touch with the right people here in my borders to ensure that we can follow what you're doing, because I think it's a critical component that is lacking, is absent.
Good. That's excellent.
Yeah.
Good. Maurice, you wanted to come in with any comments that you've seen online?
We have some comments online. I think there's one here that basically sums up the general idea. You know, it speaks about how we function as CARICOM, and it's from So it's from Philip Jackson. He's asking, why can't we have a digital CARICOM dollar and have the central banks act as clearinghouses or set up separate region-owned clearinghouses to facilitate intra-regional trade? Just this week, I had to have a client pay over 70 Bajan dollars just to remit a little over 1,000 Bajan dollars for some plantains I shipped to them. And most of the comments are along that line in terms of us truly being able to facilitate trade within the region itself.
Yes, the Dcash solution, Edmund, on the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union is offering. I know it's using the EC dollar, and it's backed in the same way that the physical banknote is backed. I also know that they've spent a lot of time on the security aspect of it, and they're using, blockchain technology, which means that people can feel safe operating in that environment. And I don't know if you can answer this question I'm about to ask. Outside of the currency union, what is the reach of Dcash to Barbados? Would that have solved Mr. Jackson's issue? Is it a product that only is going to be proprietary to the ECCU? Do you know the answer?
Well, I could answer you this way. For you to have access to Dcash, you must have a bank account within an EC territory. So that is the basic fundamental. But I understand the question you're asking, but that's the answer. So if a person is in Barbados, they have a local account in any EC territory, they would be able to utilize and access the cash.
May I say something about that? So I've been working along, and Philip Jackson is on the ball, right? I've been looking at his comments. I've been working along with the Caribbean Association of Banks as well as Carib Export, and what he's talking about goes way beyond digital cash. Digital cash is money in a different form, but it doesn't solve a lot of the e-commerce issues that we are currently facing. The clearinghouse aspect of it that Philip is asking about is fundamental, because this is where a lot of the transference, that capital transference, the value transference out of the Caribbean takes place. So I know there is something in the pipeline about establishing a sort of a clearinghouse within the Caribbean. So not only the transactions get done faster, but they're done a lot cheaper, and that money tends to remain in Caribbean economies.
Maurice, we're running down 5 minutes to the end. Any other comments you had?
I didn't really, basically just to see the comments that we've had so far, they mostly relate to things that we do have within the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union, and why we can't have that at the CARICOM level. And I really think it goes back to a question of political will. I mean, particularly when you look at other issues such as like the corporate governance code, and the fact that they tried so long ago and there's none in CARICOM, but yet we've managed to have one for the union, which says it's perhaps a question of persons being willing to really work together.
I want to bring back in Gilbert here at this point. Gilbert, I've been looking at some of the trends in terms of what people use to conduct e-commerce, the payment method, and increasingly digital wallets and mobile pay systems are outstripping the traditional credit card, debit card, and even more so in economies that are not as buoyant as, say, the rich people in the West. So why do you think that is?
It's relatively simple, right? When we look at a country like India, India has come up with a payment solution, something that is pioneered by the government. It's a closed system. It does not involve Visa or MasterCard, but just about anyone in India, it's easy for them to open a bank account, and all of their transactions are done on their phone. It's absolutely brilliant. There's zero capital transference outside of India. And the Indian government has made it very simple. And when you think about it, they have close to 2 billion people that's on a platform like that, right? That's on a system like that. So even the person that is doing transaction out of a cart in India is doing digital payments, payments and paying digitally and accepting digitally. So we have a large market there. It's really convenient. Then we have the shift. Like, I don't use credit cards. I seldom do I walk into a store and use a credit card. I use my phone to pay with everything. Right. So those systems, and the Caribbean has an advantage there. So we can skip a lot of what the world has invested in previously, and we see that actual system is going away. So we don't have to go through that part of the evolution. We could just jump directly to a lot of these mobile payment solutions. But we have to look at solutions that really benefit us. If we're going to invest in this, let's use India as an example and follow that trend. Do not use the models that says we have to now depend on an outside entity like the United States, or else, and then we are their whims and fancies.
We're like 2 minutes from the end, and I really don't want to end the program without an observation. And I'm not sure who on the panel will want to comment on this, but the recent volcanic eruption, you saw the remittances increasing at these MoneyGram and Western Union outlets, and the long lines because of COVID, the social distancing, and it just looked so surreal to me that people are standing up in lines for hours trying to get money. Is there a reason why Western Union and MoneyGram are perpetuating or continuing with this model? Why isn't there a digital solution to that? I don't know who wants to take that up.
I'll take it very quickly. there are digital solutions. I know in Jamaica, for example, money comes in directly to people's bank account, but it could also have come in on a mobile wallet. And I think that's one of the lessons we learned from COVID, is that we're doing a lot of things face to face. Even the university resisted teaching online in large numbers because there were all sorts of questions. And now we realize we can deliver the same high quality. So I think these things provide an opportunity for us to take advantage of what is there. So it is available. A lot of times it's what we demand. So we're getting what we tolerate in a lot of instances.
Well, folks, I did caution you that an hour and a half would get wings and fly, and we're at that point where we have to bring the program to a close. I'm going to thank all of you for participating. We will have follow-up discussions. We may not all gather together on the same panel, but I'm certainly going to draw on you for different discussions. I am anticipating that the next Let's Get Down to Business is going to be a program to do with the Eastern Caribbean Partial Guarantee Credit thing that they're doing. So addresses something to do with access to finance. But that's 2 weeks down the road. I want to thank people for viewing, those who have been following online, those who have been following on YouTube. Let's keep the discussion going. Let's continue to get down to business. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. All right. Good evening.
All right, thank you guys. Time flew.
Indeed.
Isn't it good to know that no matter where you are, you're covered by a company owned by Vincentians that understands your unique insurance needs? At Metrosint General Insurance Company, we've invested 50 years of service to guarantee that you have the peace of mind that you deserve. When it comes to motor vehicle, property, employer's liability, business insurance, and much more, we've got you covered. Our professional and friendly staff understands your needs and ensures you understand your options. Metrosint General Insurance Company.